Good afternoon or good evening, everyone, and welcome to week 5 in CU 122. Chef Suzanne and I welcome you to another fine live session. And an awesome live session is going to be, we had a great week 4. Lots of good submissions. I was really impressed. We also had lots of good communication from everybody out there, which is absolutely fantastic. Before we get going too far, Chef Suzanne and I wanted to take a few moments to discuss a couple of things with you. And one of the most important things that we focus on as instructors is making sure that everybody learns the technique. The rubrics that we use in this class, CU 122, are all based on the recipe. The recipe, in association with the rubric, displays that you know the technique, which is the most important thing. So when it comes to creativity and doing other different things, we encourage that. However, it's very important that you understand that we want you to prepare one batch, if possible, of the weekly recipe, and then take a portion of that batch and submit it as required by the assignment. And then if you choose to do so, take the remainder of the batch and then do your creative stuff with it and jump in there and do some different things to kind of explore and expand your ability. It's very important that everybody understands that, because the technique is really what's going to carry you far in the industry. And I know a lot of you have a lot of great creativity, and we've seen it so far in the pictures and that Chef Suzanne puts together. But we need to stay focused on learning the technique. It's really critical. It'll take you a lot further in the future. And I wish somebody would have told me this when I was a young culinarian, because I kind of got into the creative part and I kind of forgot about the technique part. And I had to go back and learn a lot of that over time. So that's what we're aiming for here in this course. And then there's another subject that we need to broach really quick too, and it's called flexibility. In the world of culinary arts, flexibility is huge. From one day to the next, what you're doing and how you're doing it is going to change. You might work for one chef where it's not too big of a deal on what you're working on or how you're doing it. You might work for another chef that wants it done only his way or the highway. So it's very important to remember to be flexible in what you do. And just kind of go with the flow, follow directions. It's going to take you a lot further in this industry. You have to remember that our primary concern is profitability, and so we're very focused on that. Once we get down to the bottom line, and sometimes creativity affects profitability by the use of additional ingredients. So that's just some words from experience, I guess you call it, after a number of years in this industry. Chef Suzanne, are you still with us? All right, looks like Chef Suzanne is having challenges with her internet. So as soon as she comes back on, we want to talk about some of the great submissions that we had from week 4, which I'm excited for everybody to take a look at, because we had some rockin' students this past week. So moving on to our week. Awesome job in week 4, everybody. You guys rocked the house once again. We're really impressed. I like this class a lot. It's very good. Something we need to start working on as a group is make sure that you work in advance. We're still getting a lot of Tuesday submissions where it's kind of everybody is waiting a little bit late. If you follow the weekly prep list, it'll help you get everything done early and in time, submitted early, so you have plenty of time to make any necessary changements. So start working on that, and it's something that's really important in industry. As an executive chef, I know that you have to be proactive versus reactive. So you always want to work a couple days in advance. For example, we're working on pancakes this week. If I'm doing a party for 500 people tomorrow morning at 7 a.m., am I going to wait till tomorrow morning to start making those pancakes? No, I'm going to start producing those pancakes today, and I'm going to have them laid out on sheet pans so I can just throw them in there and get them warmed up. So we work way in advance. If I was going to be doing omelets for 100 people tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock, you better bet I have it all planned out before I even jump in there. So it's just something to get ready for industry. Keep that passion alive. We're almost, next week we'll be at the halfway point in this course, which is week 6. And I know that we kind of get comfortable, we get in a groove. We got to keep it going strong. Don't slow down now. That now's the time to start pushing. The more you learn at this point, the further you're going to go. So moving on to something else that I think is very, very important, and I have a minor technical challenge there. Chef Suzanne and I are really big on this, and that is exposing yourself to as many different foods as possible. The best way to expand your repertoire and increase your creativity is by trying the different flavors, even if you don't like them. Because there are certain foods out there I don't care for, but there's nothing I won't try at least once. And it really helps me expand and kind of get into the groove. I'm not sure if anybody's familiar with Paul Bocuse out there. Is anybody familiar with Paul Bocuse? Anyone? He's probably the best chef that's ever lived. He just passed away at the beginning of this year. I think he was about 92 years old. He has the most famous culinary competition, or had the most famous culinary competition for chefs out there. It's called the Bocuse d'Or. It took the United States of America 25 years just to get a silver medal in that competition. He held 3 Michelin stars from 1965 all the way up till the time of his death. But he has a great saying right here. And it's, if an architect makes a mistake, he grows ivy to cover it. If a doctor makes a mistake, he covers it with soil. If a cook makes a mistake, he covers it with sauce and says it's a new dish. So in other words, don't give up just because it doesn't come out the way that you intended it to. And always remember that if you make something that doesn't come out, it's not a fail. Because the word fail stands for first attempt in learning. And oftentimes, we have to make things multiple times to master the technique. Chef Suzanne, would you like to share week 4 with the students?
I am. I'm going to turn my screen off. Hopefully that'll, or turn myself off. Maybe that'll make a difference. So, okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. We had some amazing stuff this week. This kind of sums up the whole week. Some gorgeous hollandaise.
Wow, look at that.
And I know. And to say I saw a lot of these would be an understatement. I also had given a challenge to some students to make some breakfast sandwiches. So they did not disappoint. So we had some really gorgeous looking stuff. Beautiful over easy eggs and hollandaise here.
Wow.
I know, right?
Look at Julita, that's incredible. Joshua rocked the house on the poached eggs too.
Right? And so even just a poached egg on a plate can somehow look good.
Oh, look at those.
Yeah, Nicole kicked booty with her Eggs Benedict this week.
Jerry, look at that. That's awesome.
These sandwiches, these folks just went above and beyond.
Okay, that's awesome.
And again, another type of Eggs Benedict going on. Looks like a sausage Eggs Benedict.
Uh-huh.
Jennifer made a couple different sandwiches. Looks like maybe one has some pickled onions and some sauteed veggies on them.
Scott rocked it. Look at that.
Look at that. Isn't that amazing? The presentation is just ridiculous.
Wow. Great.
So
job.
they did just, and that's just a tiny touch of what I saw this week. So the work that everyone has put in this week really shows. And I did goof last week, which benefited all of you. I don't know if you mentioned that, Chef, that
no.
Hollandaise was listed as part of your assignment, but because I said you didn't have to, I did not count off for it. So I did, if you did Hollandaise, I talked about it and gave you feedback, but if you didn't, good, bad, or otherwise, nothing was taken off for Hollandaise. So anyone who didn't do Hollandaise, I definitely encourage you to make it anyway, because as a mother sauce, it's just something you'll see often and a lot. So definitely encourage you to do that. But overall, I thought the assignments this week were incredible.
Yeah.
So
great job, everybody. I have to be honest. I don't know if I was that far along when I went through culinary school, because the food I was putting out was not near the quality of what we just took a look at. So I'm really impressed. Those are some fantastic, fantastic plates here. So great job, everybody. Now everybody needs to start keeping in the back of the mind, now that you're learning the technique and you're able to poach the eggs or make the hollandaise or make that awesome sausage, How are you going to do it for 300, 400, 500 people at a time, or do it for 1,000 people over a 7-day period? So that's really the big challenge, and that's where the chef mind starts coming into work. So keep on going on that. Ladies and gents, let's take a look at week 5, our week 5 class page. Research materials are critical. We're going to take a look at some videos this afternoon, and if you want to refer back to those videos, you will find them under the research materials located on your class page. Knowledge checks, you have 2 of them this week. Do not forget that you can take those knowledge checks as many times as you like, and only the highest score will stick. So everybody, we want to see 10s all the way across the board. Thank you, everybody, for being here for our week 5 live session. You guys rock. Good job. And then pancakes and omelets in the kitchen this week. I know pancakes seem a little bit trivial, but hang on, folks. We're going to get into some detail tonight that I think are really going to help you out in the long run. On Wednesday, this is your prep list right here, everybody. If you follow this list, your week will be easy, guaranteed, because what it does is it breaks down your week into 15, 20, 30-minute segments, and it also helps keep your attendance up to date. So attend or watch the live session on Wednesday. Read research materials and complete both knowledge checks. Do that tomorrow. Sit down with a cup of coffee and work it out. Read and understand the assignment, prep list, and purchase mise en place. Sit down on Friday, while you're watching TV, just kind of read and learn it and absorb the information. Create those prep lists, very, very important. And on a Saturday and Sunday, you want to prepare assignment and check against rubric, and then you want to submit it on Saturday or Sunday, and then make any changes suggested by Chef Suzanne. And then I think my friend Chef Suzanne added a little bit of spice down here at the bottom. She suggests that you make and eat tacos because tacos rock, which I think is absolutely fantastic. I'm a big taco. How many people like tacos out there? Yeah, look at that.
I mean, I felt like I didn't have to say it because there's never a bad time for tacos, but sometimes you just need a reminder to include tacos in your life. So there you go.
Yeah, that's a pleasant reminder. Yeah, it's like that little breathe thing. Just slow down and breathe. We'll slow down and eat a taco. Yeah. Sheila Reynolds, did you have a question? I saw your hand pop up. Sheila?
No, I was actually raising my hand for loving tacos.
I like it. All right. All right. We'll give you credit for that. That's completely awesome. Yeah. All right, ladies and gents, along with the 2 knowledge checks this week, one of those is a conversions knowledge check, and this is your weekly conversions chart. It's quite simplistic. Like we've said, every single week, you'll be so glad when you master all these, because you will get used. This information will get used quite a bit in industry. The next thing, I like to talk about new chefs. We talked about Paul Bocuse a little bit here this afternoon. And then I also want to bring up Danielle Soto Inez. And she was born and raised in Mexico City. She studied underneath Pujol, Enrique Oviedo in Mexico City for many years. And now she's working with him as his partner at Cosmo in New York City. Well, she was recently named the best female chef in the world, and she is a rock star. And I want to take a little look at her right now, because I'm really impressed with some of the new things that she's doing in the industry.
What ignites my passion as a chef is people. I believe that what drew me to cooking was personalities and people and the story behind why they were cooking what they were cooking. Solo puedo recordar la luz en la calle de las estrellas, como bailamos en la gran ciudad. My name is Daniela Soto Inez. I'm the chef partner of Cosme and Atla based here in New York. To be voted best female chef by my peers means a lot, and I'm very grateful for that. Real Mexican food for me is that it has to have happiness and spice, and it has to be fun. You can't be too serious when you eat Mexican food. Cosme is not only a restaurant, but it's an institution. When we started Cosme, I was really young, and my basics were not only cooking, but exercising and maintaining a healthy life. So in Cosme, we bring that consciousness to the staff. We stretch before service, we do some squats before service, and that's how we can bring education for someone that lives in a very harsh city like New York. To see the stories behind the staff and how fun is it to take a Venezuelan with a Mexican with a Russian and have Cosme. I think for me that's the recipe of our success.
So that's a very important thing that she's talking about right there. And earlier, a few moments ago, we mentioned how important learning techniques is. And everything that she does is based on traditional techniques. So they take very classic traditional dishes that are from Mexico or Latin America. And then with those techniques, they add new foods and new flavors and introductions to that. And she is really leading the world of culinary arts, and she is a rock star. So I really have a lot of respect for her, and it's fantastic to see somebody like that becoming the world's best chef. So congratulations to Danielle Inez Soto. So ladies and gents, any questions so far? In the kitchen this week, we're working on pancakes and Western omelets. And those are two very critical techniques. And the first thing we're going to work on is our omelets tonight. And as many as you know, omelets are just thin, round, flat cakes is what they are. And they're actually cooked on a griddle, just like the English muffin is cooked on a griddle. The pancake is prepared on a griddle. The scratch-based batter often contains eggs, milk, butter, and it's cooked on a hot surface such as a griddle or a frying pan. However, when preparing the pan, it's best to apply a liberal amount of whole butter. I know a lot of people out there like to use a pan spray, or they like to use oil, which is fine if you don't have the whole butter. But the whole butter, the best way to do this is to start with a Teflon pan. If you don't have a Teflon pan, start with a pan that has a heavy, thick bottom, because it's very important that that pan contains the heat. If it's a thin pan, the heat will escape when you pour the batter in. If it's a thick pan, the pan's going to hold that temperature at an even temperature, or it's going to hold that the temperature of the pan evenly. So it's very, very important. You'll add your whole butter. You'll allow it to melt. And then you'll take paper towels, fold it up into a nice square, and then you'll wipe that Teflon or that pan clean of the butter, and you'll notice that there's just a slight sheen left on the surface. That is a properly prepared pancake pan. You want to have a medium heat, the medium low, medium high heat, because you don't want those pancakes to cook too quickly. Remember that sugars or flour is a starch, carbohydrates, which are sugars. When they get hot, they caramelize, they turn brown, and they become bitter. We don't want any brown pancakes this week. It's very, very important. Taking a look, if you notice these pancakes over here, they're very smooth and evenly brown, and that's an ideal look to the pancake. Over here, this tells me they had too much fat in the pan, and they cooked it at too high of a heat, and it created all those bubbles that are there on the surface. So this week, we're trying to get everybody to have a nice, smooth surface on their pancakes. That's one of the things that we're looking for. So number one, pan with a thick bottom, helps preserve the heat. Number two, add whole butter. Allow it to melt, wipe it with a paper towel, leave that nice sheen, and that'll help prevent the pancake from sticking. Pour your batter down, and when the bubbles come up to the side, that's when it's time to flip. So that's pretty straightforward. Any questions about that? Nick?
Hey, Chef, I just had a question about the pan. Could you use a cast iron pan for that?
You can use a cast iron pan as long as it's well seasoned. Does that make sense?
Yep. Thank you, Chef.
You're welcome. No problem. Now, the next thing I want to touch on quickly is leavening agents. How many of you out there are familiar with leavening agents? Okay, so we have a couple of you that know about leavening agents. Leavening agents are things that give off gases in breads and batters, and that's what forces the product to rise. So we've all seen the bubbles that form when we cook pancakes or when we make muffins or cookies or breads. Something has to give the gas to force that to happen. A leavening agent, it's a number of different substances generally used in doughs and batters that cause a foaming action that lightens and softens the mixture. So it forces it to rise and gives it that nice, light, airy texture. A couple of examples of leavening agents that we commonly work with in industry. One is baking soda. Baking soda is sodium bicarbonate. And then if you take sodium bicarbonate and you add cream of tartar to it, it becomes baking powder. So the difference between baking powder and baking soda is the baking powder has cream of tartar. The reason that we have two different leavening agents like baking powder and baking soda requires an acid to become effective. It gives off carbon dioxide when it has the acid and moisture. And then it gives off gas, the carbon dioxide, which forces it to rise. If you're using a batter that does not have acid in it, such as milk, which has lactic acid, or some type of fruit or citrus in it, your recipe generally is going to call for baking powder, which is baking soda with cream of tartar. Once that's mixed with warm water, then it'll start giving off carbon dioxide and force your product to leaven. Now, it's very, very important to remember that when you're making pancakes, muffins, or anything else that requires baking soda or baking powder, you want to make sure that your liquids are cool. Because if your liquids are hot or warm or even room temperature, they're going to force that baking powder or baking soda to begin leavening and giving off the carbon dioxide. So it's heat activated as well. So it's very important to remember that. Yeast is a leavening agent that's commonly used in breads. Yeast, when it is mixed with a warm water between 90 and 100 degrees, will begin giving off carbon dioxide and alcohol. Yeast dies off right around 110 degrees, and the alcohol cooks off right around 176 degrees. That's why we don't taste alcohol when we eat bread. And then butter is also a common leavening agent as well. The butter gives off steam when it gets hot, which forces the product to rise. And then we also have eggs as well, which are also leavened products. And then butter everywhere. Thank you, Chef Suzanne, for that. Very, very important. Any questions about leavening agents? Nick, did you have a question? Nope. All right, let's take a quick look at this video. We're going to kind of skim through this. I just want you to pay attention to the parts where we stop, because I think they're pretty critical in the production. Oops.
Are actually a form of quick bread. Instead of using yeast as a leavener, quick breads use a chemical leavener like baking powder and baking soda, allowing them to bake much faster. Pancake batter is also thinner and usually contains less fat.
Uh-oh. Is everybody still there?
Than waffle.
Yeah, okay.
Start by sifting the dry ingredients.
Make sure that you sift everything. It's very, very important. The reason we want to sift is, number one, it incorporates a lot of air into the product. And then number two, it removes all the lumps. It's very, very important to understand that you want the lumps out, because the more that you mix the pancake batter, the more that you're going to develop glutens. Glutens are strands of protein that hold it together. The more mixing agent or the more mixing that you do to the pancake batter, the more glutens that you're going to develop and the tougher your pancakes are going to become. So you want to avoid over mixing, and sifting will help that.
Then add the liquids to the dry ingredients, mixing by hand until almost combined. Be careful not to mix it too much. You don't want to.
So that was pretty critical right there. So you've sifted all your dry ingredients together, and then he said add your cold liquids to the dry liquids. The reason it's cold is because you don't want to activate your baking powder or baking soda.
Dry it out or create tunneling. It should still look a little chunky rather than completely smooth.
So in order to minimize the mixing, make sure that you mix all your wet ingredients thoroughly before adding them to the dry ingredients. Development of gluten is very, very important. Okay, so that's pretty much the assembly process of the pancake batter. Now, like I said at the beginning of the class, we've already had a couple of questions today about whether people can add certain things to the pancakes. Absolutely, but first, just take a small portion, prepare what's required for the assignment, and then with the remainder of the batch, add whatever you like to. Add your blueberries, add your flavorings, add apples, whatever you like to do. Get creative. We want to see it. We love to see how you're doing with your creativity. It's very important to us. But at the same time, make sure that you follow the rubric. Does anybody have any questions about pancakes? No? Chef Suzanne, any words of wisdom when it comes to pancakes?
I think the biggest issue with pancakes is temperature, so consistency of your cooking surface, and making sure you don't have too much fat on your cooking surface. I think that's probably the issue that I see the most often. And like Chef said, we want you to have some fun and be creative, but if you make adjustments and they don't come out right, then the recipe is wrong and that can affect your grade. So that's why he's telling you, split it up, do some for us the boring way, and then do some for you and your family another way. So just kind of split that batter up. Do our boring ones and then do your kind of fun ones so that you're still meeting all the criteria for the assignment. And I'll still definitely give you feedback, and I love to see pictures. So I want to see them, definitely. But I got to see the boring ones.
Yeah, because we need to learn those techniques. Just like Danielle Ines Soto that we saw at the beginning of the class, she started by learning the basic techniques, right? Learn how to make a brunoise, learn how to make a pancake batter, and with those techniques, she was able to build an empire, and now she's the world's #1 chef. So follow the road. It's very, very important. Next, ladies and gents, we're going to dive into the world of omelets. It sounds simple, and I'm sure how many people have made omelets out there? Do we have a lot of omelet makers out there? Yeah, okay. So we got quite a few. That's awesome. We're going to teach you a little bit of a different method, something that we primarily focus on in industry. Omelets, you have to remember, breakfast cookery is very, very high pace, and it's very, very low labor. So I think I mentioned this last week. We'll have 1 or 2 breakfast cooks for every couple of hundred covers that come in. So it's a skill of organization, patience, love, and tolerance, and speed. So let's take a look at omelets and see what we got going on here. In cuisine and omelet, there's a couple of different spellings. You'll notice that on menus. And so If you ever go to a classic French restaurant, you'll probably notice it has 2 T's in the spelling, so don't criticize them right away. That's just the way they spell it. And it's made from beaten eggs with fried or cooked in a saute pan with butter or oil. I prefer whole butter always over oil. It gives it a much better flavor. That whole butter as well will also give off steam, which helps lighten the egg and keeps it much, much more blonde, which is what we're looking for. It's very common for these omelets to be folded. If you take a look right here next to Chuck Norris, right there in the center, this omelet is what we call a tri-fold or a French fold omelet. It kind of looks like a burrito in a sense, but it's actually folded once in and then another time over. And that's what's referred to as a French fold omelet. And if you also look at this omelet, it's got no color. Absolutely beautiful. That's what we would like to see this week in your submissions. The way that we obtain no color on the omelets is lower heat, medium low heat. You've melted the butter in the pan. You allow the butter to swirl and coat the entire pan, and then you add your egg. You let that egg set, you stir it gently, let that egg set, stir it gently with a plastic spatula, not a metal spatula. Preferably use a Teflon pan. It'll make your life a lot easier, and allow it to cook slowly. A lot of people throw those omelets into high heat pans, and next thing you know, you get that brown on the outside. That brown causes bitterness and also changes the texture of the egg. So we want to make sure that we have a nice blonde colored omelet, just like that's pictured here. This is kind of an American style fold, where it's just folded in half. You see a lot of breakfast cooks do that because it's so much quicker. And then don't forget, Chuck Norris can make an omelet. Something about breaking eggs.
I have just a little bit too much fun when I help Chef make these. He makes these amazing presentations for you all, and then he sends them to me to make sure they're okay. And sometimes what he gets back is not what he sent to me.
Chef Suzanne garnishes the presentations, and she does a fantastic job. Puts a smile on my face, and I think it also adds some levity to the situation. I can't talk this afternoon. I don't know what's the matter with me, but it'll come back eventually. Omelets are very common in American eatery, especially breakfast cookery, filled with everything from vegetables, mushrooms, meat, or any combination of the above. A lot of people like to add various things to their omelets, milk, cream, all these other things. I highly recommend you just make an omelet with the eggs. It's so much better that way. You try to increase the fat content by adding cream to it. It really doesn't always work out that way. The reason we add cream, milk, or sour cream to our egg mixture when making omelets or scrambled eggs in the restaurant industry is because of the lactic acid, which helps deter the eggs from turning green while sitting on a buffet or being held hot. Does that make sense to everybody? So that's a real big reason that we do it. There is a video here in your weekly presentation, which has already been posted onto your class page. I don't want to get into this video. I'd rather talk about the recipes a little bit more. I think that'll help everybody out in the long run. Does anybody have any questions so far about omelets? Anyone? Okay, this week we are working on a Western omelet, which we'll get into the recipe here in just a second. If you'd like to make a different kind of omelet, certainly make the Western omelet as required on the rubric, and then take the remainder of your egg and give us that funk omelet. We want to see it. We love the garnishes that you guys are doing, by the way. They have been absolutely fantastic and much appreciated. So taking a look at the pancake recipe this week, all-purpose flour. Make sure that you stick with the AP flour. Do not use bread flour. Very, very important, because bread flour has a much higher protein content, and you're going to develop a lot more glutens in there, and you'll have very tough pancakes in the long run. So your dry ingredients are the flour, sugar, salt, baking powder, and baking soda, because there's a lack of acid, so they're also using baking powder in this. Those are your dry ingredients. You're going to sift those. If you don't have a sifter, you can use a pasta basket, a colander, something like that to remove all of the lumps, which also helps to aerate the product. And then you're going to take your eggs, buttermilk, and mix those together, blend those thoroughly, and then you'll mix the two of them together. Make sure that you don't overmix. If it's kind of lumpy, that's okay. Don't worry about that. And then in the restaurant industry, we use ladles, lots of them. And all ladles come in different sizes, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 16, and 20-ounce ladles are very common in the kitchen. So when you're doing your setup each day, if you're doing pancakes and they want a 2-ounce pancake, so you'll grab a 2-ounce ladle each and every day. And you're going to have your griddle or your Teflon pan preheated, medium, low, medium heat, not much more than that. And then you're going to put your whole butter on there, let it melt, and then wipe it up with a paper towel. It'll have a nice sheen on it at that point. And then you're going to pour your batter. Make sure you leave about 2 inches in between each pancake because you don't want them touching. And then once that bubbling comes to the surface there, then you're going to flip them over. And you should have a nice brown surface. Just like down here, this bottom picture, all these are fantastic pancakes. You don't want that blotch mark look on it. That means you have too much heat or too much fat and you're cooking too quickly. Does anybody have any questions about pancakes? No? Chef
I will reiterate what Chef Warren said. I just put it, this week is all and slow. Don't overcook. So you don't want a whole lot of browning on your omelet, and you don't want to overcook those pancakes. So low and slow. Lumps in your pancakes are okay. They're preferable. You don't want to mix it too much because that can actually affect the texture of your pancakes. And like Chef said, browning an omelet can make it tough and bitter. So little to no browning on that omelet.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the omelet, it's very, very important. You're going to take your preferably Teflon pan. If you don't have a Teflon pan, remember, hot pan, cold oil equals no stick. So what that means is you're going to put your pan onto the heat first and then warm it and then add your butter. Hot pan, cold butter, and you're going to allow it to melt. And then you'll add your egg, and you should have pretty good success with it not sticking. Preferably, though, a Teflon pan. Your pan's hot, your butter's melted, you've swirled it all the way around. You'll add your egg, then you'll add your ingredients, and then boom, you're off to the races. So that's pretty much the omelet. Sheila Reynolds, what's going on?
The portions for the pancakes.
Uh-huh.
Do we break it down again instead of making 30 pancakes? And how long will the batter last if refrigerated?
Those are absolutely fantastic questions. Number one, you don't have to make 30 pancakes. You're going to have to submit according to the rubric. And I think the rubric calls for 1 stack of pancakes, which could be 3 or 4. Does that sound acceptable, Chef Suzanne? Yeah, because there's not a specific amount. So 3 or 4 pancakes is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, you can, it does make a lot. So this is a really good example of when you may have to start working on converting your recipes, because it does make 30 pancakes. And some people would like 30 pancakes and some not so much. This is a great opportunity to practice your conversions.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Great point. And in the restaurant industry, in reference to your question, Sheila, when we have a recipe that makes 30 of something, the chef will tell you to scale it back. Scaling is what we mean by cutting it in half or cutting it into a quarter, and you're welcome to do that with this recipe. Now, the shelf life on the pancake batter has to do with the temperature that it is prepared and held at. Like I said at the beginning of the class, the leavening agent will give off the carbon dioxide when there is heat. So if you make your pancake batter with warm ingredients and then you let it sit out on your counter for a little bit, it's going to have a 1-day shelf life. However, if everything is prepared cold and you keep in the refrigerator what you're not using, it might last for 1 or 2 days, because that baking soda and baking powder become activated with the moisture. Does that answer your question, Sheila?
Yes, because I've made it before for my daughter. She loves pancakes. So I just prep enough. And the second day, I take it out, let it come to room temperature. And then after that, then I dispose of the rest.
Yep. This is your daughter's week right here. She's going to be happy.
Oh, definitely.
She's going to want you to repeat week 5 over and over again. Yeah. Does anybody else have questions about pancakes or omelets? Anybody? All right, ladies and gents, let's take a look at some of the equipment that you would utilize when in the restaurant industry with this application here. This is what we refer to as a flat top or a griddle. You'll see these in various sizes. They come in sizes from 24 to 30, 36, 48, and 60-inch units. So there's a wide variety of different widths. The general depth is 30 inches on these units. Some are countertop units, which is this one, meaning it'll sit on top of a refrigeration unit. Other ones sit right on the ground. So it's a wide variety. But this is generally in industry what we use to cook pancakes, but we also use it to sear items, cook hamburgers, hash browns, a lot of other different things. This is what's referred to as a pancake gun right here. Very common in the restaurant industry. You set these to the size that you want your pancakes right here. So you can predetermine the actual measurement. So each time you press down on it, it'll release a predetermined amount of batter. And it'll help you make very consistent sized pancakes. Teflon pan. Remember, with Teflon pans, you do not want to use Teflon pans for high heat cooking. They give off toxic fumes at right over 350 degrees. So it's not smart. It is for egg cookery only. Spatulas, if you're using a Teflon pan, make sure you're using a plastic spatula. These metal spatulas will do a lot of damage to that Teflon, which is a bad thing. A lot of people ask, can we use glass bowls? Absolutely. While you're at home, feel free to use the glass bowls, all that you like, because once you get into industry, you won't see them around, because we do not use glass in the commercial kitchen because it easily breaks and shatters. This is another commercial flat top unit with an oven down here. This is something that you would see on a breakfast line. You can do eggs, omelets, everything you want to on these things. They're a lot of fun to work with. And then whisk. Whisk in the restaurant industry are very, very critical. A lot of people look and they think, oh, it's a whisk. It's a whisk. Well, we use specific whisks for specific responsibilities. For example, a very thin wired whisk would be something that you would use to make whipped cream, to create an emulsion such as mayonnaise, or a light dressing, and that's called a piano wire whip. They're very thin, flexible. Then you have a horsehair whip, which is much thicker, which is designed to work with batters such as pancake batter or soups and stews. So there's different varieties of whisk out there in the restaurant industry, quite a few of them. And then from my one of my most favorite groups, I think this is Devo. Am I not mistaken, Chef Suzanne? Yes.
You are correct. That is Devo.
And what does that say?
When a pancake comes along, you must flip it.
I like it. I like it. That makes me smile. Yeah. I wish they'd get back together. One more day. One more day. Any questions about the restaurant equipment, ladies and gents? No? All right, everybody, let's take a quick look at this week's assignment. And then Chef Suzanne has some special information that she needs to share. Self-identification photos, very, very important. How are we doing with those, Chef Suzanne?
Much better. Do have occasional issues, so make sure that your self-ID, and I was kind of lenient the first couple weeks, but now, you know, we're kind of really rocking and rolling here, so you will lose points. It's got to be head to toe. Needs to have the week and the date in the photo. The same thing with your sanitizer. Needs to have the container that shows the proper concentration and the week and the date also. So make sure you're getting those.
Great. Perfect. And then we need mise en place for each assignment. Make sure that mise en place is nice and organized. It says a lot about your professionalism. It's very, very important. And when you get into industry, you're going to want to work with that organization as well. It is critical. You have to remember that a few moments ago, we talked about breakfast cookery, that we go extremely fast. You must be very, very well organized. If you're looking for stuff here and there and everywhere else, it's going to slow you down. So when we see those pictures of that mise en place with everything lined out in nice, neat rows, you're heading for success, because you're built for speed at that point, and that's what you need to be worried about.
And also for mise en place photos, chef, things need to be measured out. So just having your flour and the big container of oil, and that's not mise en place. That's just kind of gathering everything together. For your photos, everything needs to be portioned and displayed. So get everything measured out and lined up all together, almost like you're going to be in a cooking show, you know, where they've got everything and they're just like, oh, pour this in and this in, and then like that.
Absolutely.
That's what you're looking for.
Absolutely. Good point. Great point. Then for the pancakes, we need the dry ingredients sifted, then we need the wet ingredients, and then we need a picture of the batter with all the ingredients until just combined. And the finished product, like we talked a minute ago, 3-4 pancakes. We want to make sure that they have that nice even browning on there, and we also want to make sure that they leavened nicely. And then we also need to see a picture of a pancake broken in half, because that will tell the doneness. If when you break it in half, it crumbles like a saltine cracker, might be an issue. If you break it in half and it runs like a poached egg, might be an issue. We want to see a nice leavened pancake in there. And then for the omelet, properly cooked omelet, no filling is necessary. That's perfectly fine. And then omelet split in half, and what that does, that'll also show the complete doneness. And then, ladies and gents, the narrative. How have the narratives been looking, Chef Suzanne?
They are looking much, much better. Getting lots of students doing a really nice job on the descriptions, utilizing the flavor wheel. I think that's some of the biggest information that gets missed, is kind of when they get down to the bottom questions, where, you know, think about how you would explain that item on a menu. So you wouldn't just say your pancakes are delicious, right? So when you open a menu at a restaurant, it's not just going to say pancakes, delicious, right? It's going to say, you know, fresh, homemade buttermilk pancakes topped with warm, you know, 100% maple syrup, or whatever that is going to be. So think about, you know, what's going to make people look at that menu of yours and want to order these items. So really start expanding on those. I think that's probably the biggest issue. And also, if you have problems, make sure you put those in your narrative, because we aren't expecting you to get everything perfect the first time. You may run into issues. And so if you've made your, like hollandaise was a really good example. If you made hollandaise 4 times and you had issues every time, and all you told me was, I had problems with my hollandaise, but maybe you know exactly what you did. So make sure you put that in your narrative, what you did wrong, and so what you can do next time so that doesn't happen, right? So your narrative isn't just about what you've done right. It should also be about what you've done wrong and that what you've learned from it. So, you know, just, you know, if you try these pancakes and you have issues and you don't have the money to go out and buy more stuff to make more pancakes this week, tell me what went wrong with your pancakes, and when you get the money and when you're ready to make them again, what will be different, right? And that can still get you full credit. So see, not everybody knows that. So we're wanting you to learn the techniques, but sometimes mistakes are learning, right? We learn from mistakes. So keep that stuff in mind too.
Yep, absolutely great words of advice. Like Chef Caesar likes to say his famous coined term, GBD on the pancakes this week, everybody. Nice, smooth surface, golden brown and delicious. Make sure your omelet pan is no bigger than 6 inches. You got to remember, you don't want that omelet pan flipping over. You don't want your omelet flipping over the side of your plate. And then, as we also talked about, don't overcook or undercook your omelet. You want it to have moisture and life when you plate it. Denise, what's up?
Hello, Chef. I was wondering, with that, the last where it said no filling required, but it's a Western omelet recipe. Is it okay if it does have filling?
It does. It's okay if it does.
Okay. And then I actually came up with a couple other questions from last week.
Sure, go ahead.
How do you hold hollandaise to temp for service and industry?
Okay, what we do is we use a thicker, more insulated container. So for example, you don't want to use a plastic cup because it's not thick and it's not insulated. If you have a thicker crock style container, we'll put it in there and then we'll keep it right above the stove. We want to keep it anywhere between 90 and 100 degrees for service. It doesn't want to be much hotter than that. You have to remember, we're allowed to keep food out in the temperature danger zone for up to 4 hours, between 35 and 140 degrees. So that 90 to 100 is perfectly fine. Plus, Hollandaise has a very high fat content, which reduces the amount of oxygen, and it also has a very high level of acidity, which preserves the product as well.
All right. How do you reduce the trailing whites when poaching?
The trailing whites, if you have a lot of trailing whites, that is a good sign that you have very hard water, very high lime content. So you could increase the amount of acid that you're adding, your vinegar or your lemon juice.
Okay. And then last, I watched Gordon Ramsay put his poached eggs immediately in an ice bath after cooking to stop the yolk cooking. Is this recommended in industry or standard practice?
I'll give you an example. I worked for Fairmont Hotels for a while. Which is a very high-end hotel chain. And we would do about 1,000 people for our Sunday brunch. And so I would poach all of the eggs the day before and put them into a large ice bath, which would immediately stop the cooking. You would not want to do that method for a la carte service, meaning to order service. You don't want to cool that product down. If you have a cold egg and you put warm Hollandaise on it, it's just not a good marriage.
All right. Thank you so much.
Did I get all your questions? Chef Suzanne, do you have anything else to add?
I don't. Those are all really good questions. So I love the good questions. Y'all keep those coming. If it's from 2 weeks ago like that, a week ago, we will definitely go over that. I don't think I have anything else. This is a pretty straightforward week, but lots can go wrong. This one is easy but the good thing is this isn't a week of really expensive ingredients. So if you do have some issues, try again. Be really careful, like Chef said, about going too far outside the box. You know, make your pancakes, do them for the assignment, and then take some more and do something fun. Same thing with the omelet. Make the Western omelet or just a plain old egg omelet. And then if you want to try adding sausage and spinach and mushrooms, and absolutely that sounds delicious, but do that in addition to the assignment.
Absolutely. Great words of advice. Sheila Reynolds, what's up?
Okay, once again.
Sure, go ahead.
I have a piano whisk. Is it necessary for me to purchase a French whisk?
No. Down the road, a French whisk, I'd love to keep one. I have several in my kitchen. And then obviously I have a bunch, when I do work as well. It does make a difference in the quality and the ease of the preparation. However, for this week's assignment, you're perfectly fine. It's not
okay.
necessary. So.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Does anyone else have any questions? Anybody else have any questions about last week? I think Denise had some fantastic questions there. She gets a gold star. So if anybody else has any questions, certainly feel free to ask them. All right, ladies and gents, don't forget you can scale back the recipe this week if you would like to. If you want to feed some friends and family, now's a great opportunity to do that and practice your production skills like we talked about. I hope everybody has an absolutely fantastic week. We are here. If you have any questions, please feel free to pick up the phone. Our numbers are on the right-hand side of the class page. You can call or text those numbers or send us a message through the class page. We'll be glad to get right back to you. Hope everybody has a great day. Take care, everybody. Bye.